Welcome tonight to the 72nd anniversary of the Battle of Iwo Jima. You know, I think of tonight, I think of Joe Rosenthal. We said goodbye, the Marine Corps' goodbye, to Joe Rosenthal here after he died. And the representative that the Marine Corps sent out was retired Lieutenant General Larry Snowden. Remember that? And he spoke, and we had 5 Pulitzer Prize winners, and we had speaking on what Joe Rosenthal was like after Iwo Jima, when he was a photographer here in California, by Carl Nolte. And Carl really told a great story about he lived in fear, because here Carl was a reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle, and Joe was a photographer for the San Francisco Chronicle. And Joe didn't have good eyesight, but Joe insisted on driving the car. So every time they were assigned to go on a mission together to cover a story, Joe would drive, and Carl was living in fear of Joe driving. But tonight we're going to hear Colonel Tom Prentice talk about the Battle of Iwo Jima. And we have with us representatives of all the battalions of the 23rd Marines, which is the regiment that fought on Iwo Jima. And we have a lot of regiments represented, but the 4th Marine Division was key to Iwo Jima. First, I'd like you all to please stand. We'll bring on the colors, and we'll sing the national anthem. I don't know what we would do without the 23rd Marine Regiment in support of the Marines Memorial. They are fantastic. The commander of the 23rd Marines, Tom Prentice, is going to talk to you tonight. In 2009, Secretary Schultz and Dianne Feinstein approached the Marines Memorial and asked if we would take over responsibility for Fleet Week. And they wanted us to give it a mission, not only to bring the fleet back to Fleet Week, but to give it a purpose of practicing humanitarian assistance and disaster response. And the best organizations that know how to give humanitarian assistance are the U.S. Naval Forces, the Marines, the Navy, and the Coast Guard. So we started that. And then Tom has worked very hard with us on Fleet Week. His most recent one as commanding officer of the 23rd Marines, he commanded a special purpose Marine Ground Task Force that was deployed to the Caribbean. So with that, Tom Prentice.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tom Prentice, the commanding officer of the 23rd Marine Regiment. Iwo Jima has woven itself more deeply into the fabric of the Marine Corps' rich legacy than any other battle that we have participated. Even the phrase Iwo Jima is more likely to conjure the image of a United States Marine in somebody's mind, as opposed to the image of a small speck of island in the Pacific. It is a very humbling experience for me to have the opportunity to speak in front of you on this 72nd commemoration of the Battle of Iwo Jima. The actions of you veterans reverberate with us today. Our Commandant, General Robert Neller, has prepared this special greeting for you.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I know you're gathered at the Marines Memorial there with Colonel Tom Prentice of 23rd Marines. Tom, thanks for putting this together. I just wanted to take a minute to tell you thanks, and we're thinking of you. I apologize for not being able to be there. But it's important we get together as Marines and share our time together and remember the legacy that you all have established for today's Marines. I was at Camp Pendleton last week watching the Crucible and the ceremony where Marines get their Eagle Globe and Anchor from their drill instructors. And after that happened, their first sergeant got them in formation and talked to them about the legacy of being a Marine, what it means to be a Marine, the sacrifice, the history, and that we walk on the shoulders of those that have gone before us. And for you Marines there tonight, you're part of that legacy. Specifically, I'd like to call out Augustine Flores, Roy Earl, George Duran, Mark Clement, Dale Cook, and Ed Cavallini, and anybody else who served on that island in that campaign so many years ago. And I'd also think we should take a moment to remember Lieutenant General Lawrence Snowden, who passed away a couple of weeks ago. We miss him a lot. But I appreciate you all getting together. The legacy that you established for us today as Marines carries us onto the battlefield today, and we are in a fight, and I really appreciate that. So again, hope you have a great evening. Colonel Prentice, thanks for your guys, and for Marines Memorial, General Myatt and Colonel Starling for doing that. Much appreciated, and everybody take care of yourself. Have a great night. Semper Fidelis.
As General Myatt mentioned, the 23rd Marines played what I would consider a significant role on Iwo Jima, and it's an honor to represent my predecessor, Colonel Walt Winsinger, who was the commanding officer of the 23rd Marine Regiment on Iwo Jima. And here's a picture of Colonel Winsinger and his XO, E.J. Dillon, on Iwo Jima. As General Myatt mentioned, the Marines that you see in uniform tonight are Marines not only from our headquarters, but they're commanders and sergeants major from each of our battalions, from 123, 223, 323, and 2nd Battalion, 24th Marines, that have come here to be with you this evening. We commemorate the Battle of Iwo Jima annually here at the Marines Memorial Club. And I will tell you that we commemorate the Battle of Iwo Jima every day at our headquarters. And if you're in the back, you may have a difficult time seeing this, but this is the front door of the 23rd Marine headquarters. And if you look up, up above the doors, it says 23rd Marines, and then right up on the top, it says Iwo Jima. And we walk underneath that every day, and that's a salute to you veterans that are in the room. So we come together today, as we do each year, to pray for the friends, the families, and the memory of the 6,821 Marines, sailors, and soldiers who fought and gave their lives on the island of Iwo Jima 72 years ago. We also take this moment to pray for the over 19,000 Americans who were wounded on this island. And we also come together to salute our veterans that served on Iwo Jima. And God bless all of you, and thank you very much for coming here and making this such a special event. I'm going to take a few moments, and I'm going to put the Battle of Iwo Jima into perspective from the macro level, but I do want you to know that I feel rather inadequate doing this. When I was asked to speak about Iwo Jima in front of our Iwo Jima veterans, I remember thinking to myself that I would feel like I would be trying to talk to Joe Montana about what it's like being a football quarterback, or talking to Babe Ruth about what it's like, being out there on the baseball field. So I put this presentation together, and I hope you enjoy some of the photos, and some of the photos that you see in the lounge outside when we have the reception. Those all come from the walls of our headquarters in San Bruno. So, to the macro level, subsequent to the attacks on Pearl Harbor in 1941, the United States adopted a war strategy known as the Island Hopping Campaign. The theory was that American forces, under the command of Admiral Nimitz and General MacArthur, would drive north and west from the Solomon and Gilbert Islands. This animated slide shows the Army and the Marine Corps attacks. The goal was to posture the Marines and the Army in a position from which we could invade the Japanese mainland. By mid-1944, the Marines had seized Tarawa, Bougainville, Guam, Roynamore, Saipan, and Tinian. You can see on this map, that red circle circles the island of Iwo Jima. It's 660 miles southeast of Tokyo. So I think the first important question is, why did we seize Iwo Jima? What was so important about this small island? Well, interestingly, it was an aircraft. The B-29 Superfortress set the destiny for the Marines on Iwo Jima. Almost 4,000 of these B-29s were built between 1943 and 1946. The bomber was capable of reaching 31,000 feet, which put it out of reach of most Japanese fighter aircraft. These aircraft dropped over 180,000 tons of bombs on Japanese targets. And we all know that the B-29, the Enola Gay, dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, and the B-29, the boxcar, dropped the atomic bomb on Nagasaki, which ended the war. As the island hopping campaign progressed, airfields from which the B-29s would launch were established on Guam, Saipan, and Tinian. Japanese aircraft, radar, and communications on Iwo Jima were causing problems for our bombers operating out of the Marianas. The airfields on Iwo Jima allowed Japanese fighters to intercept the B-29s on their approach and their return from Japan. The Iwo airfields allow the Japanese to stage aircraft to conduct nighttime raids on the Marianas Islands. Additionally, the radars on Iwo Jima were able to warn the Japanese mainland of the bombing runs. Iwo Jima was not to be a staging field for the B-29s, but it did need to be secured to safeguard those bombing runs over Japan. Additionally, its airfields would serve as an emergency divert for disabled bombers returning from Japan. General Curtis LeMay was the commander of the 21st Bomber Command when the Marines invaded Iwo Jima. He changed his bombing tactics to nighttime low-level missions, which were extremely effective. The first took place while the Marines were fighting on Iwo Jima on the 9th of March, 1945. Known as the Tokyo firebombing raid to the Americans and known as the Night of Black Snow to the Japanese, 334 B-29s dropped over 1,600 tons of bombs and annihilated 16 square miles of Tokyo. If you could raise your hand if you've flown through the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. Iwo Jima is the size of 1/4 the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. If you've been to Manhattan, Iwo Jima is 1/3 the size of Manhattan. It's extremely small, as our veterans will attest. You can see Mount Suribachi, the highest point of the island, at 550 feet high. You can see that in the upper left corner of this image. At its narrowest point, the island is 800 meters wide, and at its widest point, it's 2.5 miles wide. The island is composed of volcanic rock, which created its infamous black sand beaches. I like this image of Iwo Jima because it adds a dimension of depth to the island. You can look out over Suribachi, and you can see how the island fans out to the north. You can see the invasion beaches on the right. I think the veterans in the room will attest that when they saw Iwo Jima for the first time, it was not green like you see in this picture. After 74 days of bombing, the island itself at that time looked about dead. By February of 1945, the Japanese defenses on the island were substantial. This picture on the right-hand side is the now declassified intelligence annex to the invasion plan of Iwo Jima. And you can see in the next room, we have it full size in a frame. The emotional significance of an attack on Iwo Jima was high for the Japanese. This was the first time that Americans would launch an attack to seize a portion of the Japanese homeland. In June of 1944, the Emperor sent one of his sharpest generals to fortify the island. General Tadamichi Kurabayashi was dispatched from Tokyo, and he spent 8 months with over 21,000 troops. And keep in mind, 1/4 the size of the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. 8 months and 21,000 troops preparing defensive positions. Due to the superiority of the American personnel and Navy shipping and the United States Marines, the general knew that he could not hold Iwo Jima. He knew that it was a delaying action, and he told his soldiers they were expected to die, and they were expected to die only after they'd each killed 10 Marines. This is a picture of some of the prepared Japanese positions on Iwo Jima. General Kurabayashi had watched Allied invasions in 1943 and 1944, and he broke with the Japanese traditions of meeting the invading force on the beach. Rather than face the landings directly, he created strong, mutually supporting defenses in depth using static and heavy mortars, such as heavy machine guns, artillery, and lots and lots and lots of heavy mortars, rockets, and minefields everywhere. Armored tanks were used as camouflaged artillery positions. The expected American naval and air bombardment further prompted the creation of an extensive system of tunnels that connected prepared positions, keeping in mind 8 square miles. A historian once wrote that the Marines were on Iwo Jima. The Japanese were in Iwo Jima. The Japanese dug over 11 miles of tunnels on the island, some of which were 75 feet deep. In these tunnels were command centers and barracks. Tunnels allowed the Japanese troops to move undetected between Japanese positions. Here is a sketch on the left made by Seabees of one of the hills on Iwo Jima that had been turned into a Japanese command post, Hill 362 Alpha. Dotted lines on the drawing show the Japanese tunnel system carved into the hill. The network and bunkers and pillboxes certainly favored the defense. For instance, one of the bunkers had enough food, water, and ammunition for Japanese defenders to hold out for 3 months. The bunker was 90 feet deep. Okay, we're on the 11th floor of the Marines Memorial Club right now, so I would expect we're probably about at 110 feet high, would be my guess. I mean, 90 feet deep is extraordinary. Approximately 55-gallon drums filled with water, kerosene, and fuel oil for generators were located inside of these complexes. On this slide, you can see the Marine landing plan right next to the overhead image of the island. American forces assaulting Iwo Jima were led by Major General Harry Schmidt, commanding the 5th Amphibious Corps. His command consisted of the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th Marine Divisions. Vice Admiral Kelly Turner commanded 450 ships supporting the invasion. Keep in mind that the United States Navy today has approximately 430 ships, our entire Navy. 450 ships supported the invasion. In all, over 60,000 Marines participated in the assault on Iwo Jima. Our 23rd Marines was a part of the 4th Marine Division assault. The plan was to land 2 divisions abreast on the 19th of February, 1945. The 5th Marine Division would land almost 26,000 Marines to the south, and the 4th Marine Division would land almost 25,000 Marines to the north. This is an image of Task Force 51 prior to the invasion of Iwo Jima. The bombings and the aerial reconnaissance of the island began as far back as June of 1944. These would be the longest and the most intense in the Pacific Theater. There were 9 months of combined naval artillery shelling and aerial bombardment. D-Day dawned clear and bright on the morning of the 19th of February, 1945. The first wave of Marines landed 1 minute early at 08:59. This is an image of the Marines coming out of their landing craft. An unwelcome surprise to the landing force was the degree of soft, black, volcanic sand that covered the beaches. The sands of Iwo Jima, made famous by a 1949 movie, made progress beyond the beaches extremely difficult for the Marines and the sailors carrying their heavy equipment. After crossing the beach, they were faced with slopes of black volcanic ash, some of which were over 15 feet high. This allowed for neither secure footing nor the ability to dig fighting positions to protect themselves from the hostile fire. This is a photo taken of Green Beach on D-Day +1. The Japanese defenders waited for the landing craft to clobber the beachhead and the Marines to mass in the thick black sand before they unleashed the majority of their indirect fires. An author, Robert Leckie, wrote a book about Iwo Jima, and I really appreciated reading one of his quotes. And I'm going to read it to you briefly as it describes what a veteran explained to him as the experience that he had on that beach when that indirect fire came in. At first it came as a ragged rattle of machine gun bullets, growing gradually lower and fiercer until at last all the pent-up fury of 100 hurricanes seemed to be breaking upon the heads of the Americans. Shells screeched and crashed, every hummock spat automatic fire, and the very soft soil underfoot erupted with hundreds of exploding landmines. Marines walking erect crumpled and fell. Concussion lifted them and slammed them down or tore them apart. Interestingly, Robert Leckie was a journalist. He fought on Peleliu. When he got out of the Marine Corps, he became a journalist, and he and his wife Vera took a trip to New York, and they saw a Broadway show called South Pacific. And Vera says that halfway through the Broadway show, Robert got up and walked out because it disgusted him. And he told his wife that night that he was going to start writing about World War II because he did not think that World War II was a Broadway musical. The objective of D-Day for 23rd Marines was Airfield Number 1 that you can clearly see in this picture, and the invasion beaches are the beaches to the left. A young Marine named Darrell Cole from Esther, Missouri, enlisted in the Marine Corps as a bugler. He led a machine gun section from the 1st Battalion, 23rd Marines, ashore in that D-Day assault toward the airfield. Moving forward with the initial assault, a hail of fire from 2 enemy emplacements halted his section's advance. Sergeant Cole destroyed them with hand grenades. His unit continued to advance until pinned down for a second time by enemy fire from 3 Japanese machine gun emplacements. One of these was destroyed by a machine gunner in Cole's squad. When his machine guns jammed, armed only with a pistol and 1 hand grenade, Sergeant Cole made a 1-man attack against the 2 remaining gun positions. Twice he returned to his lines for additional grenades, and he continued his attack under fierce enemy fire until he exceeded and destroying the enemy's strong points. Upon returning to his own squad, he was killed by an enemy grenade. And for these actions, Sergeant Cole was awarded the Medal of Honor. And additionally, the USS Cole, which was attacked in Yemen on the 12th of October 2000, was named after him. D-Day on the left flank, the 28th Marines were successful in crossing the island and isolating Mount Suribachi. Manila John Basilone was killed in this action. On the right flank of the assault, 3rd Battalion, 25th Marines had landed approximately 900 Marines in the morning. The fighting was so fierce that by nightfall, of the 900 Marines that landed, only 150 of them were left in fighting condition. An 85% casualty rate on D-Day. As the Marines moved off the beaches, they found that due to the small size of the island, the broken terrain, and uniform defenses, there was little opportunity for maneuver. Movement boiled down to frontal assaults and was usually restricted to small teams and individuals. Bypassing strong points was usually not possible due to the interlocking nature of the enemy's defenses, and anti-sniper patrols had to be maintained continuously because of cave systems. A lot of the Marines talk about a big, crazy-sounding mortar or a crazy-sounding rocket that the Japanese fired, which seemed to go in all directions. It was notoriously inaccurate. Marines from Fox Company 223 say that they watched the first one soar from the north side of the island all the way over Mount Suribachi and into the ocean. They got a good laugh out of that. It was very inaccurate, but wherever it did happen to land, it was a massive explosion. Fox Company machine gun squad leader Ralph Leinhoff said that when they fired that rocket, everybody ran, including the Japanese. On D+4, the 23rd of February 1945, Marines from Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 28th Marines, completed an ascent to the summit of Suribachi and planted the American flag. In 1/100th of a second, Joe Rosenthal captured an image. The Secretary of the Navy, James Forrestal, had decided the previous night that he wanted to go ashore and witness the final stage of fighting for the mountain. He took a launch with General Howland Mad Smith to the beach. Their boat touched the beach just after the flag went up, and the mood amongst the command grew jubilant. Gazing upward at the red, white, and blue speck, Forrestal remarked to General Smith, "Holland, the raising of that flag means a Marine Corps for the next 500 years." We have a special speaker with us tonight. At this time, I'd like to call up Mr. Roy Earl.
I'm sure you can hear me with or without a mic. I'm used to speaking to groups. I used to be a college professor. I used to aim at the back rows. Okay. Well, before I start, I see all these fellas tonight in their uniforms, and this really is a reminiscent night for us. Yes, we're here to remember Iwo Jima. But it's also a time when we can remember being in the Corps physically. And I see all these fellows, God, I'm jealous. I don't know, it's just something. It just makes me always so proud to be a Marine. But that's not why I came. I want to challenge all of you Iwo Jima veterans, and I see quite a few, and I know you've been to many of these meetings. Have you ever written or called and thanked the association or the general for putting this on? Do you know what it takes to put on a meeting like this? The whole association is involved, and General Myatt is the key figure. I think it would be very nice when you guys get home tonight to write a little note, or tomorrow make a little call and thank them for putting on all these nights in the past and tonight especially. Now, I definitely was a Marine in the 4th Marine Division. 4th Division had 4 amphibious operations. I was on every one of them. And I happened to be in an outfit that most of you have never heard of, even the guys that were in the 4th then. The name is JASCO. JASCO is Joint Assault Signal Company. I was communications, switchboard operator, field lineman. It was our job, you heard that word assault in there, it was our job to go in with the first waves and get their communications set up so that the front lines had communication with the beach master and the shore party commander right away until they got their unit set up. And then when the beach was secured, we were expendable, and whatever outfit had casualties in their communication unit, there we went. But I was very fortunate. In getting back to D-Day, I went over the side, into the LCVP, the way we went, round and round and round we go, until the flags went down on the command ship. That meant you line up and go. Okay, I landed with the 3rd Battalion of the 23rd Marines. And we landed, we left, and we're on our way in at 0915, or approximately, that's what it said on my watch. And we were on our way. I was in the 4th wave, and we had to let the infantry get in ahead of us so that we could send lines up to them. I had the switchboard. I'm only a little fella. This is a 75-pound switchboard. If I held it down, it kept hitting my knees and I couldn't run. And man, you wanted to run in those days. So I put it on my head. Never thinking, what a target. But I made it. Either they were lousy shots or they weren't looking at me. I was running, and you don't run in that kind of sand. I was hurrying up the, what do you call them? Yeah, and I was looking for the deepest foxhole I could find, you know, a shell hole. And by the 2nd terrace, I found one. And boy, the switchboard and I went down in there, and I just hollered to the fellas, okay, the switchboard is operable, send the wires down to me. So the guys that were going out, they went out, I sat in the hole. And we set it up, and we, I believe, are one of the first switchboards operating and landing on Iwo February 19. And believe it or not, February 19, 1945 was 72 years ago. That makes all of us in our 90s today. Wow, can you imagine? I don't think on D-Day many of us thought we'd ever reach 90 years old. We will be lucky if we reached our next one. There's two things that I remember purposely from Iwo Jima. Neither one of them had anything to do with the battle. The first one was, as I was laying along one day, I passed a CP and I heard one of the guys say, yeah, today is the 5th of March. I stopped dead. I turned around and I said to him, what day did you say this was? And he said, the 5th of March. I said, that's my birthday. He turned around and said, happy birthday. How old are you? I reached my 21st birthday. What a place to celebrate. Oh, you didn't celebrate. What a day to reach 21. Remember, in those days, if you weren't 21, you couldn't vote. You couldn't go, any of these guys couldn't go into a bar. You had to be 21. And here we are as kids fighting a war for our country. And if you think about it seriously, and I can only refer to the Marines, of course, but I would swear that around 75 or 80% of our complement are teenagers between 18 and 21. You look at your infantry, and the best thing you do is look at the casualties and what rate they were. Private, PFC, some corporals, sergeants, and so on. Man, that's something. All right, that's the first thing I remember, having a 21st birthday in the middle of a battle. The second thing I remember, oh boy, do I remember it, was the fact that I was able to walk off of the beach when the battle was over. And this was my 4th battle. Each one, I landed with the assault waves and walked off of every one. And when I went off of Iwo, we went into an LST 792. I do remember the number. But by golly, there you go. I made it. And so we went back into training, getting ready to go to Japan. But I didn't come to talk about that. I came to talk about you fellas getting in touch with the general. General Myatt, we appreciate so much all that you have done for us during the years in getting us together once a year to commemorate this vicious battle. So all I want to say, and I'm representing all these guys, I just want to say thank you. Semper Fidelis.
Marines do not go anywhere without our corpsmen. And we have some of our highly motivated corpsmen in the back. Marines love our corpsmen. And I know we have some corpsmen on the flanks in here as well. This is an image of the corpsmen for 223 prior to the battle for Iwo Jima on the left-hand side. And this is an image of some of those corpsmen after Iwo Jima. This is a picture of what corpsmen do best. And in Iwo Jima's case, taking care of over 6,800 Marines and over 20,000 Marines that have been injured. This is what they do best. It is fitting to remember the women that served on Iwo Jima as well. On the 6th of March, 1945, Ensign Jane Kennedy landed on Iwo Jima in a Navy R-4D transport. This marked the first time that a woman landed on an active Pacific battlefield in World War II. On the right side of the slide, she's taking care of Sergeant Bill Wyckoff of Fox Company 223. Ensign Kennedy was one of 122 Navy nurses that trained here in the Bay Area at Alameda for advanced trauma care to provide to the Marines on the front lines. She and her fellow flight nurses like Ensign Mary Hudnall and Lieutenant J.G. Estella Malcar assisted in the evacuation of almost 3,000 Marines from Iwo Jima. We do have a surprise for you tonight. The granddaughter of Ensign Jane Kennedy is a teacher in Modesto, California, and she is with us tonight. Miss Julia Wright, would you please stand up? All of you probably know Marine Lieutenant General Larry Snowden as our General Myatt, and as the Commandant mentioned, General Snowden passed away 2 weeks ago at his home in Tallahassee, Florida. He was the company commander for Fox Company 223 on Iwo Jima. After the Marines seized Iwo Jima, General LeMay remarked, "The Marine seizure of this small island allowed me to double my operational tempo." And that is what the seizure of Iwo Jima meant to General LeMay. You can see on this picture, some of these aviators were impressed with the 4th Marine Division as they've painted the 4th Marine Division crest and listed out some of the battles the 4th Marine Division have participated in, and painted that on the front of their aircraft number 49. This is the American cemetery on Iwo Jima in 1945. Over 60,000 Marines and 21,000 Japanese soldiers took part in the battle. In 26 days of fighting, 6,821 United States Marines, sailors, and soldiers were killed. Another 19,217 were wounded. Marines captured 216 Japanese soldiers, and the rest, approximately 20,000, were killed in action. The island was finally declared secured on March 16th, 1945. It had been one of the bloodiest battles in Marine Corps history. After the battle, Iwo Jima served as an emergency landing site for over 2,400 B-29 bombers. Securing Iwo Jima prepared the way for the last and largest battle in the Pacific, the invasion of Okinawa. 27 Medals of Honor were awarded for actions on Iwo Jima, more than any other battle in United States history. In closing, as we commemorate today, I want to bring attention to the spirit of the Marines and the sailors who fought on Iwo Jima. The spirit of what you have created has lived on in Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Your dedication lives on in the Marines and the sailors that you see before you today in uniform, and it lives on in the actions of Marines currently serving around the world. It will live on as long as there is a United States and a United States Marine Corps. I would like to take one moment to thank a gentleman for assistance in the preparation, Mr. Steve McLeod, who's with us today. Steve, if you would raise your hand, please. Steve is putting together a book that'll be out next year, I suppose, and it's about Fox Company 223, and I think that some of you may find it of interest. Thank you very much, Steve, for your assistance in this. Thank all of you very much, and for our veterans here tonight, God bless you, God bless your families, and Semper Fidelis. Thank you.
Very good, Colonel Prentice. I really, really appreciate that. I think the one thing that we haven't done is to recognize the Iwo Jima veterans that are with us tonight. You know, when Jim met us, he said very well, when he was going into Fallujah, he said, "Can we take Fallujah? It's not Iwo Jima. If we could take Iwo Jima, we can take Fallujah." That's right.
Most famous photograph, and I believe the most important photograph ever taken, the raising of the flag on Iwo Jima, taken by a 33-year-old San Francisco newspaper photographer by the name of Joe Rosenthal. His eyesight was so poor he had been rejected when he tried to enlist. But this was the man who persevered, made his way up 550-foot Mount Suribachi along with Marines of the 5th Marine Division and took the photograph that we know so well. A small group of Marines, of which I belong, I'm a civilian, for some reason they let me hang around, has started an effort to have a Navy ship named after Joe. We feel that not only is Joe deserving of that honor, but by keeping his name in the public eye and honoring him, we also honor the Marines who served on Iwo Jima and all of America's veterans. Please sign our petitions, tell your friends. If you'd like one of us to attend, your veterans group, your church group, your book club, and talk about the photograph, talk about the photographer, talk about why it's the most important photograph in the world, we'd be happy to do that. So thank you so much. Thank you, Marines.
You know, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, but I wanted to ask you, when we depart, I want to go into the Crystal Lounge and have a glass of wine and some hors d'oeuvres and things and hang around and talk about the battle, talk about the talk tonight that Tom gave you, but most importantly, talk with these Marines from the 23rd Marine Regiment that are with you tonight, and you'll find out the Corps is still in very good hands. Thank you all very much tonight.